than you think I am. But so when we found out, and it was actually, she was under doctor's care and everything. So that's my thing that I tell people now, is that make sure you ask questions and make sure you look it up, you know, yourself, because some of the symptoms that she had already that we didn't know, that were certainly symptoms of lung cancer, but you wouldn't think that a toothache, you know, you wouldn't think that that could be connected to lung cancer, but she had this really bad, and when she passed, she got some kind of grant for like $4,500 to get her mouth done. But it wasn't that, it was the cancer that was raging in her body, because she was diagnosed at stage 4 already. So it was already too late, really. And they told us that. They told us that it was too late. And it was a practicing doctor at the emergency room that said this, not even her own doctor that she had been seeing all these years. It was an emergency doctor that diagnosed her. And he was young, but he knew right away what it was. And I remember as time, because we didn't have a lot of time, you know, but the thing about it is, I think I was in a session with Melanie earlier, and she was talking about, you got to talk about it. You have to talk about, when we get to those years of, what are we going to do if something happens to you, and, you know, where's everything at and all that. But we talked about that, and she didn't ever want to talk about it. And I don't know why I persisted for her to talk about it, but it was wonderful in the end, because everything was kind of set up. You know, we knew what she was going to, down to what she was going to wear and everything, because we really didn't have a lot of time, but we didn't think that we didn't have as much time. We didn't think that 6 months it was over, you know. So I remember asking her, you know, because she stopped talking. And I said, you know, are you depressed? You know, and she was like, I don't know. But I knew that that's what it was, because she stopped talking. You know, she still wanted to go to church and things like that, but she was just there, you know. And I think, and so I know that that was the mental part of it, you know, taking hold of her, especially if you've never been sick and never had to take medicine. And now all of a sudden you got to have chemo, you know, got to take all these different medications, and you got to go to these 5, 6, 7 doctors. And I just remember, like, the uncompassion, if that's a word, people at the clinics and stuff. She had to have some type of scan, not an MRI, or it was some kind of special scan that she needed to have. And we had to go to Dale Hospital to get it. You know, Dale is a children's hospital. So we get there, she has this terrible cough, because I remember that was my first thing to know that something was wrong, because I was like, Mama, that cold is not, that's not right. You shouldn't have a cold this long. And she was like, the doctor said it's allergies. We live in Austin. So now when people say that, you know, I get frigid, you know. I was like, no, go to the doctor, because you don't know. They blame everything in Austin on allergies, you know? And so, but she had this cough, and so she couldn't be still. And they was like, be still. You know, you have to be still for this test. And she was getting frustrated, you know, because she couldn't stop coughing, you know, and so they couldn't really do the test. And so they were trying to do this. But anyway, we had to travel. There was no treatment. So we had to, she wanted to do research, and I'm so happy and I'm so thankful, because I just found out that the drug got passed. But she was in this trial. They wanted to do a trial, to put her in a trial, and they would prolong the time, is what they said. She wanted to do it. You know, me thinking back on it now, I would have said, no, don't do it, because I'm thinking the quality of life that she could have had just those 6 months, just those 6 months of not being as sick as she was, would have done a lot more for her and for the family during that 6 months, you know. But that was some of my experiences, you know, with that, and to know, and just to say that, you know, family, everybody can't do that. Everybody cannot be a caregiver. And I applaud people that say that they can't, and then others get mad and say, you should take care of your mama. But if you know that you can't do it, because you're going to have animosity, because everybody is not going to want to do it. You know, she had so much fluid in her lungs that, you know, she had a Pleurix catheter. And so we had to drain it, and I had to leave work. I would leave work, and I'm so thankful that I had the job that I had, that they would let me leave work to go home to drain this fluid off my mother, because she was so uncomfortable with it. But we all had the training, but nobody did it but me. So it was hard. It was very hard. Those were some hard 6 months, but it was worth it. It was worth traveling to San Antonio, because we had to go to San Antonio. We couldn't even do it in Austin. We went to San Antonio, and I was so thankful that I found out about the resources that the Cancer Society has, you know, and they get you hotel rooms, you know, that she could stay in a hotel room while she's doing her treatments for those few days, you know, or that would have been a cost of ours, or she wouldn't have been able to go. So, yeah, those are some of my experiences.
Thank you very, very much. When you all were talking, you kind of dropped little bits of things that I really would have wanted to ask as a follow-up question, but we'll still do that. For most people that I have personally interacted with, they would say that cancer diagnosis came as a surprise. For most people, do you all know why that seems to be the case? Is it because we don't go to the clinic enough? Or is it a health disparities in our healthcare system? Or is it a cultural thing? We just don't go to the hospital, we don't have health insurance. What could that be? Why is a diagnosis almost always a surprise?
I know for myself and a lot of people, when I found out I had cancer, I was 58. And I was in exceptionally good shape. You know, I was playing basketball full court, and, you know, I was just in really good shape, you know, and a lot of people say, well, it's hard to tell how old Black men are because, you know, they're preserved, especially being in prison. You know, you work out, you know, and you take care of yourself. So when they told me I had cancer, it was like, no, I can't have cancer. I didn't want to believe it right away. There were so many other things going on in my life. You know, when I got back out in society, was medicating, because there was a lot of, deep down inside, there was a lot of stress, you know, and I medicated because I didn't know, you know, when I was growing up, people didn't know anything about PTSD. And I was suffering from PTSD, childhood trauma. And I had pushed it way down. But I've noticed people had gotten cancer in prison. You know, when things come up to the surface, you know, it really hits you. When I was in prison, we had groups, these group therapies, and 95% of the guys in the groups that trusted each other, when they talked about childhood, and these guys, 95% of them were the biggest, baddest dudes, had childhood trauma, were sexually abused, most of them, you know, and that goes on, trauma. So cancer with Black people, sometimes we've gone through so much, it's just another thing. It's in our DNA that, you know, we learn to survive. But now I have a therapist, and I can go to the therapist, and I can vent, and I can bring up those tears, you know, and what's hurting me, because I never did it before. I never trusted anybody, you know, especially being in prison. I didn't trust my father. You're supposed to trust your dad, and this guy is like, he's the boogeyman. I've woken up I remember from 5 years old, waking up with a beating. So, you know, you learn not to trust, but now it's like the conversation, you know, just having a conversation. And some people react different when they have cancer. Some of them go into denial, some of them talk, but I know experience being around a lot of Black men, it's the stigma, you know, it's embarrassing along with everything else, shame and guilt. You know, I'm stigmatized through a convicted felon. I'm stigmatized just being a Black man. I grew up in New Jersey in a white neighborhood. And when I was like 8, 9 years old, I couldn't figure out why, when I went to friends' house with other white friends, when they went in the house, why did I have to stay in the garage? I couldn't figure that out. So when I finally figured that out, it was, you know, another shame of who I was. I had told my mother one time that I wish I was white. She's like, you know, you need to be proud of who you are. But why would I say something like that? Because of society. So now I'm a cancer patient, but I feel a lot better who I am. I'm a Black man. And, you know, and I advocate for Black people, and I'm in a Black group, you know, at Communities Recovery. We call ourselves the Black Caucus of Recovery. You know, and we're tight, and we have, you know, we're building this trust with one another, and I think that's real important.
I like that.
Can you repeat the question? I know it's cultural.
Yes,
surprise.
why does the diagnosis of cancer come as a surprise to us?
And you said something about cultural.
Yes,
and-
is it cultural, as in we just don't go to the clinic enough and get screened for these illnesses? Or is it that we don't have health insurance? Is it the medical health system that doesn't really take care of us when we go to the clinic? Because I have my own medical stories.
I think it's some of all of the above.
Of that.
I think it's a little bit of all of it. For me, it came as a surprise because I was taking care of my sister. I was helping my sister take care of my other sister, and I was commuting to San Antonio and back. So I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about her. So I went home one day and it was my time of the month to take my breast exam, and I found a lump in my breast, and I was like, this can't be. So yes, it was a surprise. And then I think culturally and historically, there's been issues with no insurance, the racism around medicine, medical apartheid, and just the whole agenda around medicine and being Black. And also with women, especially so, we're so busy taking care of everybody else that we tend to put things on the back burner when it comes to ourselves. And when we finally decide to do something, it's usually too late. So then when it comes to insurance, sometimes when you go in to try to qualify for something, you might be 2 or 3 pennies over the poverty level, and you can't get it. So what do? How do you manage that problem that may kill you if you can't get help? Then on the other hand, you have situations around just having money. What are you gonna do? Do I feed my kids? Do I pay the light bill? Do I get the medicine? So I think it's just some of all of that that's a part of what we do and why we don't do what we do. And also, you can go to the clinic or you can go to the doctor, and depending upon how you're treated, you may not go back.
True. Anything to add, Ms. Cynthia?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, look at this room. I was in a sold out room before this session here. Nobody wants to talk about cancer. Nobody in no community. So I feel like there's this thing called health literacy. And a lot of people don't understand when they go to the doctor. So if you're not going to the doctor with your mother, your grandmother, even some of your kids, even some of us, that are not of age, they don't understand what the doctors are telling them. They don't understand some of the words that they say, because they're not talking in a way that they can understand. They're using the big words, the medical terms, and assuming that they understand. And then your visit is 5 minutes. So you told me all of that in 5 minutes. So I think that it needs to be more education around it, about it, and there's big organizations and everything. They have the Cancer Walk, the Susan G. Komen Walk, they have the Relay for Life every year. You can get all these resources, and people don't know until it happens to them, till it happens to your family. Then you start looking, and then you start knowing, because that's what I did. I wanted to know all about it, know all the symptoms, all of that, because my mother and my father. So that put me at a greater risk, because my mother didn't smoke. She didn't have any, she wasn't even in medical. So it was a surprise because she didn't have any medical conditions. So that was the surprise. And then when they said lung cancer, we were like, what? Uneducated, not knowing that, we all can get that. So then I was thinking about the secondhand smoke part of it, along with the asbestos. So yeah, I believe, like Deborah said, that it's all of the above. All of the above.
Thank you. Quick one. Let's talk about the mental health aspect of it. When you have cancer or a loved one has cancer, what does that do to you?
Well, for me, I had just gotten married. So body image for me, my body, how I look totally changed, to the point But I had my husband take photographs of my body before. So I could have, and he could have a memory of what I looked like before I went in that hospital, because I wasn't gonna look like that when I came back home. I would never look like that again. So the whole mental part around that for me is that while I was lying in that hospital, waiting to go home, the shame came. You know, I didn't want my husband to see my body anymore. I would find times when I would, if it was time for me to undress, I didn't want to undress in front of my husband. When it was time for me to take a shower, I didn't want him to see my body. And he just told me, he said, honey, I told you I didn't marry you for your breast. If you remember when you were sick, he showered me, he took care of me, he fed me. I didn't have muscle tone. I would drool like a baby. He did everything for me. And he told me, he said, I need you. I don't need your breast. I need you. So I had to come to a mental state to accept myself and accept my body for what it is. And that's who you were then. This is who you are now. And I had to tell myself that my breasts don't make me. So when I got to that point, I was able to undress in front of my husband and just be myself. And my husband would kiss my scars and tell me that they make you who you are. That's all part of our journey, darling. And I'm here for you. So it was a hard road, but because I had a man who loved me for me and nothing else but for me, and I know that he was for me.
Wow. Yeah, the mental affected me, even though I hid it. Because I've been on this journey of prostate cancer for 11 years, almost 68 years old. And, you know, physically, you really can't tell. But the mental is like, it's hard to invite people into my life, you know, like relationships, you know, I go out and socialize, and I meet females and that want to go out, you know, and it's like in my mind, I don't want, you know, I want to protect them and not to be a caregiver one day. You know, my therapist says, well, let them make that decision, you know, but it's really hard to really tell somebody. I have a friend now, and we hang out once in a while, and we go to eat once in a while, but she doesn't know I have prostate cancer. And it's like, well, you know, so I don't know what's worse, to tell her I have prostate cancer, or if I'm a convicted felon and been to prison, I don't know many times. You know, and I say, you know, shame in my game, but there is shame, you know, it is shame, you know, shame and guilt are like Siamese twins, you know, and I've been dealing with that crap for all my life. Ashamed of my parents. Dad was an alcoholic, you know, and everything can be going really nice, and all of a sudden all hell can break loose, you know, big fights. And I was ashamed to bring girlfriends home to my house. You know, my dad be drunk and, you know, and say something very, you know, toxic to my girlfriend. You know, it's just shame to who you are. So it's just this is so much stuff. Being a Black man in America is just stressful in itself. You know, you're the most hated person on the planet, it seems like, because, and sometimes it's not just color, it's cultural. Because it seems like Nigerians or Ethiopians that come here, they get more respect and job opportunities than African American because, you know, stereotype. You know, rap and pants sagging. And I go to the Target or Walmart and I'm followed, you know, around. It's just, you know, but I deal with it like the prostate cancer. I go to a support group and I can share, you know, because there's people in the room that's just like me, to having a conversation, you know, and I could shed some tears. But there's, you know, it affects me, you know, even though I don't show it. It affects me big time, you know, having cancer, you know, because, you know, what's great about it, and I try to look on the bright side when I wake up, you know, because I'm the gratitude list. Because if it wasn't for the gratitude list, boom, right away, I wouldn't have made it this far. You know, the gratitude list is my man, my mom is just so proud of me. You know, the crap that I put her through. You know, everybody else just forgot about me. My sisters, my brothers, my cousins. I get out of jail and it's like they would bet money that within 6 months I would be back in jail. You know, so I had to get out this time, you know, through cancer, and I had to do the work, you know, and I had to start doing something with my life. You know what I'm saying? And start thinking about me all the time and stop being selfish. You know, it's more important to help somebody else that has prostate cancer, because I'm on the list where I'm like that 800 hotline where the person in our group, when they find out they have cancer, they call me and I just have a conversation and just tell them share my experience and, you know, and some options. And then because when my focus is on other people, I'm not thinking about all my other miseries, you know, it goes out the window and then I'm having a good day, you know, so it's just about, you know, giving back, you know, caretaking, you know, that kind of caretaking your brother out there, you know, it's just, we as coaches, we deal with it all the time. You know, I'm in the center and people come in there just, man, they have to get into drug treatment. It's just, you know, the streets, whether it's cancer, whether it's drugs, crack. Crack is the devil. It has affected black men in America, especially black men over 40, you know, in our community. They just throw that shit in our community, excuse my French, you know, and it's like, because it's the solution. It was my solution. I had no other solution from all that pain and all that stuff that I was going through inside, you know. Today, this is just different solutions, but I didn't have any other type of solutions before. Drink and the smoke, and, you know. But today, you know, there's solutions and support is probably one of the biggest things, you know, having a conversation, you know, today, because back when I was young, nobody talked on TV programs like Oprah and all these things about family problems, what daddy did to you. All that was brushed under the rug. You didn't talk about that, you know. What's wrong with that boy? Oh, he just acting a fool. No, he's suffering from PTSD, you know. So today is like, peer support is the best thing that happened out there, you know, because I was more apt to trust a peer, someone who has a lived experience, than someone who's a social worker or a doctor or authority. Well, you need to do this or that. But somebody that's been there where I am, you know, and that's how we do it.
Thank you. Cynthia, your unique perspective on caring for your parents, what did that do to your mental health? Because we know that when we're taking care of others, we don't think about ourselves.
Initially, because I think I've been a caretaker pretty much all my life. I knew my great grandmother, and so I was always at her house. And so I had an aunt there that had schizophrenia back then. I didn't know what it was, you know, I know now from, you know, my training and things like that, that's what it was. But so I think I've been doing that for many, many years. And so when this happened, and I think that was the struggle for my mom, was that she was rooted in the church, born and raised in the church. And so her thing was church. And so that was, you know, passed down to us. And so I found myself questioning, like, why my mama, you know, because my dad was the one that smoked and drank and chased women and all of that. My mama didn't do any of that, you know, so I was angry and I couldn't understand, like, why her, you know, God take care of her, you know. And so, but in the midst, and that's why I said about the animosity that you will grow. I didn't grow animosity towards her, but I grew deep animosity for my family, because I felt like it was just me. It was only me. And she always called me her $1 million baby. And but I didn't want to do everything, you know, and I told her, I was like, you know, you have three kids. You have three, like, and one don't have a job, you know, so where's she at, you know? And so it was a lot, because like I said, I had to leave my job to go home to take care of her and then come back to work. And then in that same state, you know, thinking about it, you know? And so I feel like, I feel like I still go through that sometimes now. Because even when my father, because he had it and he went through a lot of things in his life, but he had a rough, you know, he did a lot of stuff to have a lot of medical problems too, but he lived for like 7, 8 years after she passed. And he was the smoker. He was the, you know, so I still was, you know, dealing with that in my mind, you know, like, why did he live so long? Not that I didn't love my daddy, you know, I love my daddy, but so I think even now when things come up and they're a week apart, it's amazing because they're a week apart. Their birthdays, same age too, and both died of lung cancer. But it affects you in a way, in a whole nother way when you're caring for somebody, because I had to step into that role because it was nothing else to do. You know, I mean, I called my job and said, hey, I quit. There's nothing, I didn't know how I was gonna live or do anything because I didn't have anybody to help me pay my rent and things like that, but I knew that I had to do this because you know, my grandmother taught us that that's what you do, you take care of family. And she took care of me all of those years, you know, and I wasn't even living here. But my grandmother passed before that and she had breast cancer. And I knew that I had to get back to Texas because I wasn't even living in Texas and I didn't understand, like, why am I still here? Not that I don't like Texas or anything, but I just didn't want to live here. And but I was thankful that I had those years that I had with my mom because I had been gone for so long and nobody. I said, y'all haven't been taking care of my mama, you know. So I was mad and I was angry at everybody and don't touch none of her stuff because you know how people do when somebody passed. All those vultures come up and want to run stuff and you know all of that. No, don't touch none of her stuff, you know. And so it was the first time that I seen, and I had to check myself because that's not how my mother raised us, you know. And my brother, he was in a new relationship and he wanted the stuff for his new girlfriend and I would, you know, you know. And so, but you know, and even with her, and I never told them that they won't see this, but I never told them this, that my mama said that she didn't feel comfortable with them. And that still hurts me now, you know, that she knew that they weren't going to take care of her because when they came, like if they come, they're ready to go already, you know. And I was upset because when I get there, I'm working, I'm washing clothes, I'm changing the fluid, so I don't get that visit. I get to work, and I get there, and people are sitting up there in the house, you know, her family, her sisters, you know, everybody, and all that, and I'm coming in the house working, got off work, come here working. So yes, I was angry. Yes, I was mad, cussing, fussing, and all of that, you know, but I held a lot of it down because I could always hear her saying, Cynthia, you know, like, don't do that. Don't be like that because that's how how honorable she was to her family and her friends and stuff like that. But nobody was there for her at that, you know, during that time. So yes, I had a lot of stress, you know, during that time and after that.
Thank you. Let's take a couple of questions. Anyone? Yes, I will bring this to you.
Thank you all for sharing so much. I'm going to try to package this the best way I can, and I hope I don't offend anyone. I lost my brother a year and a half ago to stomach cancer. 10 years prior, I lost my mom to lung cancer. The lung cancer that she was dealing with, it went to her brain, and she started. We basically started to, you know, see her tumors. We started, you know, she started to get very strong headaches, a very awful time for our family, for her. And definitely, I can speak for myself. For me, it was so rough going through that because I guess some of us had the thought that, well, cancer is something that affects everyone else, not you, not those that you love. And I say that to say that so I was her caretaker in Round Rock, Texas, Houston, Texas, Del Rio, Texas, and then McAllen, Texas, until she passed. And one of the things that will always stick with me is that we went to Baylor Scott and White to get her checked because she was getting some immense headaches from the cancer. And I distinctly remember her having to sign a check for her care while she was having this headache. And she was negotiating with, what can I pay now versus what can you bill me later? For us, it was like a real life thing that we have to deal with. But I think it was just said, you take care of family. So you just want to make sure your family's good. Sometimes I think that that's in opposition to the way our system works. We say take care of family. Meanwhile, I think a lot of patients are seen as customers, not patients. I happen to have a job where I could move around with my mom. Not everybody has that opportunity. My dad couldn't leave his work because his insurance was paying for her care. He couldn't see her. She had to, I'm getting to something here. She had to go from doctor to doctor to doctor to get the right one to help her for her needs, because she had to advocate for herself. And I think we all know how that is, where you have to advocate for yourself, or your family members, you hope that they'll advocate for you. My point is, I don't think that we have a system that's built for people to have better care, to sustain their lives, for their family members to care for them. I think we have a system that's built against people. That's me personally. And I was just curious what you all feel about the way our system may be built for patients and for their families.
Well, I think Miss Cynthia kind of alluded to that when she mentioned having to go to San Antonio. And if you hadn't had some of that help, you wouldn't have been able to take care of your mom.
Yeah, I think that, because like I said, it wasn't like she didn't have insurance. She had great insurance. Remember, I told you she had even gotten a grant to get her mouth done and everything. So the system failed her. I mean, because how is it that we go to the emergency room just from a fall and this, learning doctor from UT diagnoses her with stage 4 lung cancer? There's no way that should have happened. Like I said, health literacy. She was going to the doctor by herself. So we don't really know. I ordered all the records, I tried to get all the records and stuff, because they even in the end, they gave her death certificates, didn't say lung cancer or complications of lung cancer. It said neurofibromatosis, which is something that she had all her life. So that wasn't what killed her. It was the lung cancer, the complications of the lung cancer that spread throughout her body. So even then, I still had to fight to get it changed. And yes, I know she's dead, but I don't want that on her death certificate. So we had to battle, even with that, even with the doctors and everything that I was like, you don't know her. You wasn't even her doctor. You're just the doctor signing the death certificate. So yes, I believe that the system fails us many times that sometimes we don't even know that it failed us.
And the system failed me from the very beginning, because I had just had a mammogram 6 weeks prior to finding a lump in my breast myself. 6 weeks later. And when I went back, when I found the lump in my breast and I called my husband in the room and asked him if he would feel my breast to tell me what he felt. He said, "What do you feel?" So I told him what I felt, and he said, "I do too, call the doctor." So I called the doctor's office, and when I called the doctor's office, they said, "You have reached, this phone does not take messages. We are open from 8 to 5 p.m. Please call in the morning." And that was the longest night of our lives. We did not sleep that night. So when I did call back and I talked to the lady who was in the office, she said, "Weren't you just here when she heard my name?" And I said, "Yes." And she says, "Well, what's wrong?" And I told her, and she said, "Well, hold on, let me go get your chart." So she came back and she says, "Well, you know, ma'am, it took me so long because we hadn't even put your chart back up yet. It was still on the the little cart." So she said, "The doctor will be here in about 30 minutes, so call back." So I called back and he said, "Come right, I need you to come right now." So I went immediately over there. And he said, "I know you just had a mammogram, but I need you to go across the driveway and have another one and come right back." So I did. And when we went over there, I was looking at the monitor and I could see all of it was like a spider. Just think of a spider with a lot of legs on it. So it was like a ball, and I could see all of that on the monitor. So the woman who was taking my mammogram, she turned it away from me. So I couldn't see it, but I had already seen it. So she sent me to another room, and she told me to come. She left the room and she came back and she said, "I have to take it again." So long story short, what I saw was what I felt. And what I felt, I knew it was cancer because it was solid, it wouldn't move. And when I went back across the way to the doctor and he saw the x-rays, my husband was there then. And my husband was really something. He put the x-rays up. He started reading the x-rays and telling the doctor what it was. And the doctor said yes. And the doctor started to cry because I had just been there. And he told me he'll see me in a year. So had I not advocated for myself, I wouldn't be here today.
Any more questions? Yes, so each one of their stories, thank you for sharing. And if you had a good close friend, looking back, you're here now, but what could you say to how someone could support you? What would you tell them? How would you ask for support? Because sometimes people want to help, but they don't know what to do. So how would you ask for help? That's the question to each one of them. And I'm talking about somebody who really cares about you, because you do have those people that are friends and they truly care. Yeah. How would you say?
For me, I don't have family close to me here. They're New Jersey, California, Hawaii. I would probably trust the hospice system because I would probably advocate for a good hospice person because I know eventually if my cancer comes to that point that I would have to be prepared for that, because it's being embarrassing that you can't even, go to the bathroom and take care of yourself, caregiver. But there's people out there who do that, they step up. Kind of like even to his question, insurance, good insurance, you can have a nurse navigator. But when I first had MAP, a nurse navigator, you don't get Medicaid, you don't get a nurse navigator. That's the Blue Cross Blue Shield. So you have to advocate. And caregivers, I don't know, that's for maybe God to raise somebody up to do that, So right now I have, put my trust in a higher power, I'm not there yet. I'm here. So.
Looking back, I would ask my family, no one was in town except for my husband and me. So looking back, I would ask because my two sisters, remember, they were going through it at the same time. So I would ask my church family and friends that I worked with and friends that I knew that were close to me if they would do a meal train and bring meals over, if they would come and allow my husband to take a nap so he could rest. And I would ask people who could, just do the things for me that he did for me sometimes, just, give me a bath so he wouldn't have to do everything. Can you just feed me today? Just little things. Sit with me while I watch a movie or just read to me because I love to read and my eyesight, chemo took my eyesight. It came back, but it took my eyesight. So my husband had bought me all these books to read and I couldn't read them.
I didn't reach out to anybody because my family wasn't supportive. So I didn't think about friends. If your family don't step up, who will, right? So I didn't think about it. But now, since you asked me that question, thinking back, just even a phone call to check on me, because people did know what I was going, they didn't know exactly what I was going through, but they knew about my mom. And it was wonderful because I did feel the support from my job. Ain't that something? And not my family, but that was my family. You're with your coworkers, probably more than you're with your family, And so they did step up. Like I said, they allowed me to take care of my mother. I didn't have all that time. I was in transition actually to the job that I have now. And I had to call them and say, hey, I can't take this job because I would have certainly got fired from the city because they wouldn't have, I was just new there. They wouldn't have let me do that. So I'm glad that I stayed where I already was until it happened, and that just to tell you that my mother was in hospice. I didn't have a good experience with hospice because hospice is the end of life thing. And so all they're pushing is that morphine and things like that, and that's not, she didn't want it. And she kept saying, I don't want it. Now she didn't talk, but she told us that she didn't want that morphine. And so I was like, she don't want it. I'm not giving it to her. So they did tell us, they said, if y'all don't take her home, if she wants to go home, take her home today. And we did. And she lived in a housing thing on the east side and Lions Gardens. And she lived on the 3rd floor. So we moved her. She always wanted to live on the 1st floor. We moved her from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor, put everything up. So when she came home, she would notice it, be recognizable. And we got that done. She came home. She died the next morning at 7:00. But she got to go home. She wanted to go home. And so she got to go home and she was able to see it home. And I never forget her telling me, I'm okay, because I'm in there. She looked so uncomfortable. I was just moving her around. She was like, I'm okay, Cynthia. That's the last thing I remember her saying, But I would say, call and check on people. Because ain't nobody, if people are used to being independent and doing everything on their own and don't want to bother nobody, because you still, even though people offer it, you still feel like you're bothering people when you ask for things because it's so much, So I always just say, make sure you check on them, call them.
And send cards because you can read them over and over and over.
Thank you. Quickly, any resources to share? Do you have any resources to share?
Absolutely.
How can we learn more about cancer and how to take care of ourselves?
I think, first of all, when you feel something is going on in your body, don't wait. Waiting is not an option. Had I waited, I would be dead today. So you have to take action. You have to. And then find somebody you can talk to. If it's just one person that you can share with what's going on, because it's a heavy burden. It's a heavy load to carry. So seek out a support group. People who have support groups live longer than people who do not. Also, if you can get a pet, sometimes if you don't have families or anything, you just get a little pet that you can have. And if you don't like a pet, get a teddy bear.
Yeah, I would say there are resources out there. There's money out there. And I've learned to navigate a lot of those resources, even just right here on the local level. There's medical access cards because I did my radiation in 2005 through MAP. There's clinical trials. You can go online and research clinical trials. I did one as well for about 8 months in Houston, at MD Anderson. I wouldn't have never been able to afford that. And they put me up, I was there like a week at a time, and they put me up at a Marriott, so there's resources out there. There's a lot of the support groups, Us Too International, for men who have prostate cancer. They find resources for you. Zero Cancer has the 360 program. They will definitely get some resources for you. So, we live, there's, like they used to say back in the old days, there's gold up in them hills. You have to, you have to find it, and help somebody, that's what we do is, resource coordinators, we help people navigate resources, in the recovery community, and it works out just fine.
Anything to add?
Yes.
That-
just one
okay.
more thing, the American Cancer Society, don't forget about them. And they have a 1-800 number. It's a hotline. And you can ask them any question at all on that hotline. And it's 24 hours and they will get you an answer.
Well, thank you very much, Daryl, Deborah, Cynthia. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you, everyone, for attending. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I hope everyone has learned a thing or two. So if you are looking for CEUs again, please make sure you sign in, take the evaluation for the CEUs, take the evaluation for the session. And if you don't get your